But confusion prevails on day one of the 2,000 rupee note exchange. RBI leaves it to the banks to decide on a daily limit and identification norms. Politics escalates over G20 meet in Srinagar. National Conference patron Farooq Abdullah's daughter Safia mocks the diplomatic event, says normalcy image of the valley a facade to hide forces on ground. Imran Khan's key aide and former Pakistan Human Rights Minister Shireen Mazari quits the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party and active politics. She's been arrested more than 5 times since the May 9 violence. Prime Minister Narendra Modi got a resounding reception at the Sydney community event, which, according to the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, surpassed the enthusiasm that Sydney showed even for the legendary American singer and songwriter Bruce Springsteen. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke of India being recognized as a force for global good. He spoke of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, speaking highly of India as the bright spot in global economy. We get you more in our top story from Sydney.
Hugs, handshakes, high fives and a traditional welcome. The Narendra Modi Anthony Albanese bonhomie took centre stage at the Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney Olympic Park. An enthusiastic crowd of over 20,000 even stunned the Australian Prime Minister.
I said to my friend, the Prime Minister, before, the last time I saw someone on the stage here was Bruce Springsteen, and he didn't get the welcome that Prime Minister Modi has got. Prime Minister Modi is the boss.
After a rock star welcome, the Prime Minister took to the stage among chants of Modi Modi. His opening remarks an acknowledgement of the deep Indian-Australian ties.
क्रिकेट की फील्ड पर मुकाबला जितना रोचक होता है, उतनी ही गहरी ऑफ द फील्ड हमारी दोस्ती है। दिल्ली स्ट्रीट, बॉम्बे स्ट्रीट, कश्मीर एवेन्यू, मालाबार एवेन्यू जैसी कितनी ही सड़कें यहां ऑस्ट्रेलिया में आपको भारत से जोड़े रखती है।
The Prime Minister also hailed the soft power that binds the two nations.
हमारे बीच भौगोलिक दूरी जरूर है, लेकिन हिंद महासागर हमें आपस में जोड़ता है। हमारी जीवन शैलियां भले अलग अलग हो, लेकिन अब योगा ये भी हमें जोड़ता है। क्रिकेट से तो हम ना जाने कब से जुड़े हुए हैं, लेकिन अब टेनिस और फिल्में भी हमें जोड़ रही है। हमारे यहाँ खाना बनाने का तरीका भले अलग अलग है, लेकिन अब मास्टर शेफ हमें जोड़ता है।
As the representative of world's largest democracy, Prime Minister Modi presented India and the values it stands for on a global stage.
भारत हजारों वर्षों की जीवंत सभ्यता है। भारत मदर ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी है। हमने समय के अनुसार खुद को ढाला है, लेकिन अपने मूल सिद्धांतों पर, फंडामेंटल्स पर हमेशा टिके रहे हैं।
आलाजी तारा हाथ वखाणू के पट्टी तारा पगड़ा वखाणू आलाजी तारा हाथ वखाणू।
Ahead of the mega diaspora event, Indian culture was on full show in Sydney. From Garba to Natu Natu, the sights and sounds of India swept over Sydney. Bureau Report, India Today.
The Prime Minister emphasized and re-emphasized India is the mother of democracy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese have met 6 times this year. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke at length about the close people-to-people ties, from cricket to curry, democracy to diaspora, and from economy to education. He announced that an Indian consulate will be opened in Brisbane. He also made an emphatic pitch about India rising.
हमारे यहाँ पर्व त्योहार भले अलग अलग मनाए जाते हैं, लेकिन हम जुड़े हुए हैं दिवाली की रौनक से, बैसाखी के जश्न से। हमारे यहाँ भाषाएं भले अलग अलग बोली जाती हो, लेकिन हम जुड़े हुए हैं मलयालम, तमिल, तेलुगु, पंजाबी, हिंदी भाषाएं पढ़ाने वाले इतने सारे स्कूलों से। साथियों, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के लोग, यहाँ के निवासी इतने विशाल हृदय के हैं, दिल के इतने अच्छे और सच्चे हैं कि भारत की इस विविधता को खुले दिल से स्वीकारते हैं। वैसे मैंने सुना है कि हैरिस पार्क में चटका की चाट, जयपुर स्वीट्स की जलेबी, उसका तो कोई जवाब ही नहीं है। आप सभी यहाँ ऑस्ट्रेलिया में हैं, यहाँ के विकास को देख रहे हैं। आप सभी का एक सपना रहा है कि हमारा भारत भी विकसित राष्ट्र बने। है ना आपका सपना? है ना आपका सपना? है ना आपका सपना? जो सपना आपके दिल में है, वो सपना मेरे दिल में भी है। ये मेरा भी सपना है। 140 करोड़ भारतीयों का सपना है। साथियों, भारत के पास सामर्थ्य की कमी नहीं है। भारत के पास संसाधनों की कमी भी नहीं है। आज दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी और सबसे युवा टैलेंट फैक्ट्री जिस देश में है, वो है सही जवाब दे रहे हैं आप, वो है इंडिया। आज दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी और सबसे युवा टैलेंट फैक्ट्री जिस देश में है, वो है और अब मैं आपके सामने ऐसे ही कुछ फैक्ट रखूंगा और आपसे सही उत्तर जानना चाहूंगा। ठीक है? रेडी? कोरोना की इस ग्लोबल पैंडेमिक में जिस देश ने दुनिया का सबसे तेज वैक्सीनेशन प्रोग्राम चलाया, वो देश है, वो देश है, वो देश है। आज जो देश दुनिया की फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग लार्ज इकोनॉमी है, वो है, वो है, वो है। आज जो देश दुनिया में नंबर 1 स्मार्टफोन डेटा कंज्यूमर है, वो देश है, वो देश है, वो देश है। आज जो देश फिनटेक एडॉप्शन रेट में नंबर 1 है, वो देश है, वो देश है, वो देश है। आज जो देश मिल्क प्रोडक्शन के मामले में दुनिया में नंबर 1 है, वो देश है, वो देश है। आज जो देश इंटरनेट यूजर्स की संख्या में दुनिया में नंबर 2 पर है, वो है, वो है। आज जो देश दुनिया का सेकंड लार्जेस्ट मोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरर है, वो है, वो देश है, वो देश है। आज जो देश राइस, व्हीट, शुगर केन प्रोडक्शन के मामले में दुनिया में नंबर 2 पर है, वो है, वो है। आज जो देश फ्रूट और वेजिटेबल प्रोडक्शन में दुनिया में नंबर 2 पर है, वो है, वो है। आज जिस देश में दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम है, वो है, वो है। दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा ऑटोमोबाइल मार्केट जिस देश में है, वो देश है, वो देश है। दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा सिविल एविएशन मार्केट जिस देश में है, वो देश है, वो देश है। और अब जो देश अगले 25 साल में विकसित होने के लक्ष्य के साथ आगे बढ़ रहा है, वो देश है, वो देश है। भारत वो देश है जिसने कोरोना के संकट में दुनिया के 150 से ज्यादा देशों को उस संकट की घड़ी में दवाइयां भेजी। भारत वो देश है जिसने 100 से अधिक देशों को मुफ्त वैक्सीन भेजकर करोड़ों करोड़ों लोगों का जीवन बचाया। आज आईएमएफ भारत को ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी का ब्राइट स्पॉट मानता है। वर्ल्ड बैंक का विश्वास है कि ग्लोबल हेडविंड्स को अगर कोई चुनौती दे रहा है तो वो भारत है। आज दुनिया के कई देशों में बैंकिंग सिस्टम पर संकट है, लेकिन दूसरी तरफ भारत के बैंकों की मजबूती की आज चारों तरफ प्रशंसा हो रही है। दुनिया में 100 साल में आए सबसे बड़े संकट के बीच भारत ने बीते वर्ष रिकॉर्ड एक्सपोर्ट किया है। आज हमारा फॉरेक्स रिजर्व नई बुलंदियां छू रहा है।
Let's try and make sense of the super smash at Sydney. Joining me on the show, Professor Salvatore Bebonis, American sociologist and associate professor of sociology at the University of Sydney. Joins us from Australia, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar is former top diplomat, Syed Zafar Islam, Member of Parliament and spokesperson of the BJP, and Salman Soz represents the Congress on the broadcast. Professor Bebonis, if I could begin by asking you, you met the Prime Minister earlier today. What's been the buzz on this community event at Sydney?
Well, first of all, the most important thing to realize about this community event is that it is or was a community event. This was not organized by the Australian government. This was not organized by the Indian government. This was very much organized by the Indian-Australian community here in Australia. And I know that because I know several of the people who were involved. They were contributing their own time, their own money to make this happen. And they were incredibly excited to have this opportunity to have Mr. Modi speak to them. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Modi went ahead with his trip to Australia not to meet Anthony Albanese. I mean, let's face it, once the Quad Summit was moved to Japan, there wasn't much reason for Mr. Modi to come to Australia, except, well, two things, I guess, to attend this event and maybe to meet me. And I'm going to tell you, it wasn't to meet me. That wasn't the reason he came. It was for the community.
Right. Salman Soz, what do you make, one, of the event at Sydney and of, for example, the US president saying, I should take your autograph, when he said that to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, or that people are seeking tickets for that state dinner with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and that the US president is running out of tickets, or the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea touching his feet, or the Australian Prime Minister calling Prime Minister Narendra Modi boss at this event? Salman Soz, can you hear me?
Gaurav, I can't really hear what you said. I could hear the other gentleman from Australia. I can't really hear you. Your voice is very garbled. I'll have to log back in.
Okay, you log back in. If you can still hear me, let me put that question to you once again. What do you make of this community event at Sydney? Okay, I think we will have to wait for Salman Soz once again. But Syed Zafar Islam, the Congress says whenever the Prime Minister declares a note ban, or whenever a note ban is declared in India, the Prime Minister is on a foreign tour. He went on a tour after 500 and 1,000 rupee notes when that note ban happened. He's gone again once the 2,000 rupee note is being withdrawn. They see nothing more to his trip overseas.
Well, let me first clarify, correct you rather, that there is no note ban. It is a withdrawal process, which is a very fairly standard process as far as RBI is concerned. We, as the government, has nothing to do with it. It is the decision of the RBI. And as a matter of policy, new note policy or clean policy, new note clean policy, which RBI follows, every 5 years, 7 years, they do replace the old notes, and which is what they are doing. So they never, in all their circulars, they have never mentioned that this note is not a legal tender. It continues to be a legal tender. I think you should see the point number 5 of the RBI circular. So it is very unfair for anyone to make this kind of statement when the legal tender is, all these 2,000 note is a legal tender in the country. As far as his visit is concerned, you see what a massive reception he is getting everywhere, wherever he goes. I mean, it's a moment of pride for all Indians. I think the Congress party, instead of having this kind of differences, having this kind of petty-mindedness, they should also appreciate that you have a Prime Minister whose popularity is being acknowledged by the President of America.
Okay.
People say that the most powerful man on the earth is always the President of America. And see what he has to say. He said that your popularity is unprecedented, unmatched. Even when I am inviting people in White House for dinner, it never used to happen when a president or prime minister of another country come or visits or come over for dinner. The invitation card is still, many invitation card is still is there in their office, and they can accommodate more people if they want to accommodate. But here all the invitation has gone, And still, there are huge demand for people
So
to
you're saying
attend
the Prime
event
Minister's
or the
popularity
dinner.
is
That only suggests
unmatched
that you have
globally. Salman Soz, you agree with the BJP spokesperson?
They must be spoken.
Gaurav, to be honest with you, I haven't heard your question exactly right, but I did hear the BJP spokesperson talk about the note ban or the 2,000 rupee kind of currency recall and the Prime Minister's popularity in Australia. When the Prime Minister of India goes to any foreign country, he represents India, and in that sense, India is an important country, and the Prime Minister is respected in foreign lands, not because he's some individual, but because he represents all of India. May I remind you that Dr. Manmohan Singh in 2005 spoke to the joint houses of Congress in Washington, and he received a standing ovation. And by the way, he was the first Indian Prime Minister to be invited by an American president for a state dinner. So these things happen. But I'm glad that the Prime Minister is with the Indian community in Australia, and he's getting a good reception there, very warm reception. He must be feeling good. He did get a very warm reception in Karnataka as well, but unfortunately that did not translate into victory for the BJP. And there are reasons for that, because the reasons are that people, I think, it is my view, that people ultimately want improvements in their living standards. And, I know the Prime Minister talked about how India is #1 in milk production, India's banking sector is really strong, etc. But may I remind the audience that India was already #2 and catching up to America in milk production in 2014. May I remind the Prime Minister that Indian banks, public sector banks, have written off $121 billion, B for billion, dollars of loans in the last 5 years. Maybe he should not be talking about the banking sector in a foreign country. And by the way, when you go to a foreign country, I think no, let me just finish. One final thought. Can I make one final comment?
I will respond to that as well.
Of course. Go on, sir. Salman Soz, please complete your point.
Just one final thing. And again, to our friend from the BJP, to the audience, I just want everybody to note that this is an Indian Prime Minister. He's not bigger than India. He's part of India and he represents India. If he gets izzat, respect, it is because he's our Prime Minister. He's India's Prime Minister. Not because he's bigger than the country.
But did anybody say he's bigger than the country? Or is that...
he thinks... Sometimes, Gaurav, I feel that he thinks he's bigger than the country. Sometimes I feel that the media makes him out to be bigger than the country.
You feel he thinks. Fair enough.
I think, let me respond to that.
Syed Zafar Islam wants to respond before I bring in Ambassador Sajjanhar. Go on.
It is not him who thinks. He always thinks the country is the highest priority. Everyone should prioritize country first, and he always prioritizes his country first. That is something which is very is evident in last 9 years, because he is always, from every platform he's spoken about India as a country, the country he represented as the Prime Minister. Today also he's addressing the people of India, or people who have even from India, but they have taken citizenship of Australia. But he is talking about how India has grown in the last few years. India is #1 in many spaces, and also most important, that he is also talking about how India is catching up with the rest of the world. And he also said about the next 25 years where India wants to be.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, this political sniping apart.
Prime Minister.
Let's take this point by point. Ambassador Sajjanhar, political sniping apart, are there tangible takeaways from the Prime Minister's visit? And let's, for the moment, focus only on Australia, because some may argue that this was a photo op and an event, a great community event. But what is it for India in this?
No, I think there is a huge lot for India in this. After all, India and Australia we have just signed a trade deal, a free trade agreement. That's very important. We've been working on it for many, many years, and we've been able to come to that and sign that. So, Australia and India are very strong economic partners, are very strong trading partners. And it's not only in the area of economy and trade, it's also in the area of strategic cooperation. Both of them are members of the Quad. They collaborate very actively as members of Quad. You would recall that when the first summit meeting was held in September 2021, and at that time it was decided that the Quad would manufacture 2 billion vaccines to be manufactured in India with finance and from Japan and the United States, etc. In terms, then, Australia was supposed to distribute. That has been done. So there are many areas in which the two countries are collaborating. Also, we are going to see the Malabar exercises being organized. Now they are going to be organized near the coast of Australia. When, you look at the expansion.
So that's a signal that goes out to China. That's a signal that goes out to China. Professor Bibonis, if I come back to the political point that's also being made, Prime Minister hailed India as the mother of democracy. The Australian Prime Minister spoke of powerful democracies coming together and being strengthened together. You've also seen the narrative, whether in India or some of these indices that say that India is going down the freedom index. There appears to be a major disconnect. So is there in your view, and since you've studied the subject, is there an inherent bias against India in these indices?
The indices, obviously, I've written and spoken a lot on this. The indices are, for the most part, very poorly constructed, and their own data show that India actually has a much more robust democracy than their text reports would suggest. So I think we can't really take the indices very seriously. Of course, other democratic countries take India seriously as a democracy. That said, there is a problem. For instance, here in Australia, coverage of the Modi visit split among the major outlets. The Australian, which is the News Corp, Rupert Murdoch affiliated newspaper, covered the visit mainly in terms of strategic issues, that India would be an important strategic partner for Australia. On the other hand, the Sydney Morning Herald, which is the opposing group of newspapers, what are called the 9 newspapers here in Australia, ran an editorial decrying India's, what they perceived as India's poor human rights record. So this narrative is still one that is heavily debated, hotly debated outside India. Now, I'm gratified to be a part of this debate and to have the opportunity to bring data to bear. I had my own op-ed today in the Australian Financial Review, the main financial newspaper in Australia, saying that the India debate needs data, not drama. And in fact, when I met Mr. Modi, I gave him a copy of that newspaper, and he was thrilled by the headline, not because the headline was pro-India or pro-Modi. He was thrilled about the headline because it emphasized data, not drama. And he kept repeating that in English. That's really what we
let me take that to Salman Soz. Salman Soz, whether you can hear me or not, I'm sure you heard Professor Bibonis that the focus needs to be on data, not drama. And when there is a conversation about democracy being threatened in India, the Prime Minister made it very clear, India is the mother of democracy. Is there a narrative that's being built because of domestic politics and outsiders taking advantage of it?
Look, the Prime Minister, obviously, he has his own agenda, he has his own views, and he calls India the mother of democracy. But we perceive democracy in a different way in India. We feel the pulls and pressures of this government on a regular basis. I mean, there's a reason many people are unhappy and are worried about Indian democracy. Just by building a new parliament building does not mean that you are a champion of democracy. You can say it. You can say it, in Australia or in America or wherever, but ultimately what matters is how do people inside the country, because it is us. We are the ones who actually matter in this debate the most. And it seems to me, going back to the Karnataka verdict, people gave a certain verdict which said that we are not happy. If they were happy, then the Prime Minister's efforts on behalf of his party would have borne fruit. They did not.
The fact that you won, does that not show that we are a very vibrant democracy?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Let me explain why. Because, just because we have elections does not mean that is that is a sign, but that's not a good enough sign of a robust democracy. A robust democracy would be where media would be totally free. I personally don't think that that is the case. And by the way, we may disagree with a lot of these indices that come out internationally. When they suit us, we use them. When they don't suit us, we don't use them. We criticize them. So as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, this time I've lost you. Perhaps you've gone on mute, and it's not, we are not silencing your voice. You've gone on mute on your own.
No.
We are not silencing you.
It was by accident. It happened because of my own. It was not.
Opposition is totally free on this channel.
No, let me just finish my point here, and then you can take over. I was suggesting that when the press freedom index comes up and it says that India is sliding, it's backsliding, and we're getting closer to China, it hurts. Frankly, it hurts.
But you agree with that, that we are worse than Pakistan or Afghanistan? I'll get Syed Zafar Islam to respond to that. But let me just take this to Professor Bebonis only on the number crunching, only on the numbers and only on the indices. Our press freedom going down. Professor Bebonis, sitting in Australia, how would you look at it? Ambassador Sajjanhar, I want you to weigh in on it. And of course, Syed Zafar Islam. But Professor Bebonis, please go first, sir.
Look, Gaurav, you know that I always comment with a straight bat, and the fact is that press freedom in India is objectively very strong. Now, I say that objectively. That's different from subjective perceptions. Many people in India have the subjective perception that they're not free to report. Now, that enters into the indices, and the indices then get published and people use it. When we're able to turn to objective criteria, the objective criteria all show India in an extremely positive light. That is, far better than any country outside Western Europe and North America. Whether the subjective perceptions matter, well, of course they do, but we can't ultimately argue with people's subjective perceptions. They're just that. They're subjective.
Okay, fair enough. Ambassador Sajjanhar, your take, whether India is the mother of democracy, genuine democracy. Salman Soz, his party has won Karnataka, and he says that's not genuine, or in his words to the effect that that's not genuine democracy, just because free, fair and impartial elections may have been held. But Ambassador Sajjanhar.
Gaurav, holding free, fair elections is one particular element. It's a very significant element. It's a very important element. It's not the only element. There are other parameters. And I think on those parameters also, India comes out, shining very bright. Whether it is, we've been talking a little bit about the media, whether it is in terms of rule of law, how does the judiciary function, etc. I think all of that. And basically, again, what we speak about is democracy able to deliver in terms of improving the living standards of the people? Okay. And I think here, definitely in India, democracy has delivered, meaning I'm not saying it, even in Hiroshima, it was President Biden who said, in the Quad meeting that democracy in India has delivered. Just to give you one example, Gaurav, and I think that will illustrate it. We were number 11th on, as far as our GDP is concerned in the global rankings in 2004. In 2014, we came down to ranking, we were 10th largest, today we are the fifth largest economy. We were the 11th largest.
Yes.
Then in 10 years, we became the 10th largest. Today, we are the 5th largest. And according to economists and analysts and commentators, we are going to become the third largest economy by 2027. And that means that the economy is growing and this prosperity is being shared amongst the people. So there is living standards are coming up.
Okay.
You look around, infrastructure, everything, in terms of manufacturing, etc. I don't say that everything has been done well.
Okay.
There are still so many miles to go.
Fair enough. But Syed Zafar Islam,
the direction is correct and the space has been made much more rapid.
Syed Zafar Islam, Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls India a force for global good. He speaks of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, but within the Kutumb in India, you heard Salman Soz, and then there are those who say the democracy in India is under threat. The press Salman Sood says is not free.
Well, Gaurav, the definition of democracy, as far as Congress is concerned, is very different. They want to bait and please a section of the society that is called democracy, and that is called democratic process. But when the entire nation is treated at par and equally, then it is not democracy, because you are treating every individual citizen at par with the rest of the country. So the definition of democracy is very different. When you won the election, you criticize us. You every day on the television channel and the newspaper, you see newspaper reports against us. Still, they are criticizing our democracy. And when Pakistan, where you can't speak a word against the government, and it's a very they follow the democratic process. I think we need to understand India is indeed a mother of all democracies, and it is not only because of last 200 or 300 years it is being followed. It is followed for generation and generation and generation, for thousands of years. And nobody can ever question the democracy of India, because it has become, or it was a template, and it is a template for the world to follow when it comes to following a democratic process.
Okay,
so
Salman Sood, you want to respond
or any other political leader, criticize. No, let me just complete. When people like Salman Sood, or for that matter any political person, criticizes, we understand that is not they are criticizing the democratic process or the democracy which is being followed in the country. It is just the lust of power, and they are out of power. That's why they have to make this kind of a statement to malign our own nation, to give a bad name to our country, and criticize the Honorable Prime Minister, who has become an icon for the rest of the world to follow as a leader, which is so evident in today's community or in Kudos Arena in Sydney, that how people liked.
Response Salman Sood's direct allegation that democracy for the Congress, according to Syed Zafar Islam, is minorities first or Muslim first, is perhaps what he was trying to say, an appeasement of some, not all.
Frankly, I don't really know why, Zafar, you would bring Muslims into this, and why you. I mean, is it the BJP's policy that you have to hate Muslims? Is that the policy? Why do you do these kinds of things? Do not talk like this. You're a Muslim yourself.
I never said Muslim.
So I mean,
I never said Muslim.
The point is, that's what Gaurav.
I didn't say Muslim. Gaurav said Muslim. I said the policy is very different.
Gaurav seemed to be said that he was.
That is his discretion, but I didn't mention.
Let me
yes, you have a flaw. Your policy has flaw, and that is something which I stated, highlighted.
Zafar, give me an opportunity.
Please do that.
The point is that
please do that, but
the basic structure of a democratic polity, the basic structure of a democratic polity is to be able to question fearlessly, freely. That is what democracy is. You cannot say, you cannot question whether India is this or that. We are when we ask questions, this is because we believe we have a better way. Not because we think that, your method is that anybody who raises a question against your favorite person, against this personality cult of Prime Minister Modi, then you're being anti-India. That is what the BJP tries to tell people. You try to shut debate down by saying that
I will respond to that, Gaurav, please, for 10 seconds.
Let me finish. Yeah. Zafar, I did not interrupt you. That is anti-democratic. That is an anti-democratic instinct in the BJP. That is what we are saying. That is what we are putting forward. And by the way, now to turn from you, Zafar, to the good professor who said that objectively, he said we don't believe in subjective assessments. We should not believe in subjective assessments. We should believe in objective assessments. I agree. Okay, great. Because I'm an economist. I deal with data. I did not hear the good professor talk about data in support, the objective data in support of his assertion that, press is free in India. I invite you, Professor Barbonis, to Kashmir, where journalists are, routinely harassed. They're arrested. My place, where I come from. I invite you, and you will have data on arrests of journalists. That is objective fact, not an assertion that you are making. You said very nicely that we should believe in objective data, and I agree with you. I commend you for that, but you did not present any data in support of your assessment.
Fair enough.
To the respected diplomat among us, Mr. Sarjanhar, You talked about the economy, and I know a little bit about the economy, sir. I may not know a lot about diplomacy, but I know a little bit about the economy. There are many factors because of which, our economy may be growing as a whole, but our per capita incomes are still very, very low. We're in the neighborhood of Nigeria. And there's a reason, by the way, some economies may be losing, the overall GDP rankings. That is because the population is not growing. They're losing population. We are gaining population. Please understand, this is not rocket science. This is basic economics.
Okay, so Professor Babonis, you go first in responding, then Syed Zafar Islam, and then Ambassador Sajanar. Go on, Professor Babonis.
Well, obviously, a panel discussion is not the place to present data. I've done that in my papers and in the extensive interviews. That said, I've actually repeatedly reached out to both Congress and op party figures trying to get greater engagement because, the message I've been giving is something that obviously has been politicized in India, and BJP people have been very eager to get this message out. But I tell people on the Congress side that this vilification of India and the international statistics existed well before 2014, and it will persist if Congress or OP or some other party were to win the elections in 2024. This is an India problem. It's not a BJP issue. And I invite Mr. Saws to reach out. All of my contact information is open. I'd really like to have that fuller discussion, to have more data, to have these conversations.
Fair enough. So I'm glad I got the two of you together on the same platform for data and for more analysis on that. But Ambassador Sajanar, Prime Minister Narendra Modi refers to India as a force for global good. And he gives the instance that you spoke of, vaccine Maitri. But what do you make of the response overseas and the criticism that comes India's way on the aspect, whether it's of democracy or freedom of media and expression?
I think, I would tend to go with Professor Babonis when he says that all these, indicators, etc., they are extremely subjective. I've also had a look at them. And, so the language that goes into, when they come out with these reports is very, very loaded. It's very, very biased. They don't come out, there's no transparency as to how these particular, indicators are arrived at, what is done. It is, they just come and they say, so there is, and it is done, I think, in a very ham-handed manner. There is no professionalism that I can see, particularly as far as this media thing is concerned. But if you give me half a minute, Gaurav, because what Mr. Soos mentioned about the economy, I think that one point the Prime Minister also mentioned, it is both the IMF and the World Bank who have said that India is the one ray of hope today in otherwise a gloomy environment worldwide. The second data that I would like to give him, since he's, he said he's an economist and he's keen on data, is that the managing director of the UNDP has just said that 455 million people in India have been brought out of poverty over the last 15 years. And most of them, the rate of removal from poverty has been much faster since 2014 than it was earlier. So this is data for you, Mr. Soos. And I would be very happy to provide that particular information, that particular quote from the UNDP. And, even during 2021, during the pandemic time also, things have not, we might have gone down minus 6.8% our GDP, but we have recovered more than fully after that. Okay,
since you mentioned about journalists in Kashmir, Syed Zafar Islam, you want to quickly respond to that aspect about, journalists in Kashmir not being free, as Salman Soos put it?
We don't have a lot of data about that. We do have data
Syed Zafar Islam.
I don't know why. I don't know why he's making this kind of statement, which is factually incorrect. I was there in Kashmir for almost 2 months when there was election a year ago. And a lot of people, a lot of journalists, we interacted, but nobody had this kind of an allegation to make what he is making. It's a disturbed state, I understand. And people who are responsible to make it a disturbed state is Salman Soos' father and many other leaders of the valley. And today, everybody is suffering because of their policy and what policy they had adopted way back in 1986 or 87. So they are victim of that policy you have followed. But today they are feeling
I've run out of time, but since you've leveled a direct allegation at Professor Saifuddin Soz, at Salman's father, Salman Soz, you have 30 seconds, sir.
No, I'm saying that, but let me just complete. Let me just complete. All I'm saying that when you evaluate a democracy, when you evaluate a democracy, you also see the parameters, two prominent parameters: fairness and equality. I think the governance model of our government under the leadership of Modi, Prime Minister Modi, that we follow very strongly the governance model which believes in fairness and equality. That's why all the welfare scheme which is run by the government goes to everyone without any bias.
Fair enough.
And that suggests that it's a very healthy democracy, unlike people are making this kind of allegations.
I will not dignify what Zafar Islam says about my father. For example, my father can defend himself, but I can say that, by the way, that if there were more decent people like my father, India would be in a much better position. But as far as Mr. Islam's favorite politician is concerned, it is the same Prime Minister and Home Minister who basically arrested the entire leadership of Jammu and Kashmir.
Right now, sir, I've run out of time completely, but we will have you back on the show. We will have you back on the show, Professor Babonis, and to all our guests, many thanks for joining me here on this India First special. I need to take a quick break. Coming up on the other side of the short break, Imran Khan's key aide and former Pakistan Minister Shireen Mazari has quit active politics. This after she was arrested more than 5 times since May 9. Details coming up. Stay with us.
Where the software engineer meets the smart market analyst, meets the gifted content writer. To create the big dream, the world comes together at Sharda University. So where are you?
We broke CM Sita 48 hours before all. We broke Deputy CM DK 12 hours before all.
Their exit poll was the exact poll.
We broke Karnataka formula 72 hours before all.
We have that answer for you now on India Today. Siddaramaiah will be the next Chief Minister of Karnataka.
India's #1 political team is unrivaled. Every news break, first on your channel.
You're now smiling and accepting Deputy Chief Ministership.
We have promised them that we'll give a good government with a good governance.
Keeping you ahead is our promise. The war has ended. India Today stands tall.
Quality today. In Delhi, 97. In Mumbai, 82. In Kolkata, 153. In Bangalore, 66. In Chennai, 81. In Hyderabad, 100.
Why does this happen? Let me tell you the science behind it.
For more informative videos like this, keep watching India Today News Mode.
Big story coming in from Pakistan. It's a massive setback for former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan. Shireen Mazari has resigned from Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party. The former Pakistan Rights Minister has quit Imran's party. In fact, Shireen Mazari's daughter has come out all guns blazing. Imran Mazari has accused Imran Khan of abandoning her mother while Shireen Mazari was in prison and not once arrested 5 times after the May 9 violence at the Corps Commander's residence and other places in Pakistan, including General Headquarters. Shireen Mazari was arrested multiple times, 5 times. Shireen Mazari apparently fell ill in Pakistan's Adiala jail, and yet Imran Khan stands accused of ignoring her plight while she was in prison. And it's not just Shireen Mazari's daughter, but Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party leader Fawad Chaudhry's wife had earlier hit out at Imran Khan. She in fact had said that Imran Khan is only worried about some leaders and not all leaders and party workers. Again, a point made by Shireen Mazari's daughter that Imran Khan isn't bothered about thousands of his party workers languishing in various jails. Let's quickly cut across and listen in both to Shireen Mazari and her daughter Iman.
मेरी सेहत के हवाले से और जो आजमाइश मेरी बच्ची ने ईमान ने ख़ास तौर पे मेरी वजह से इस पे गुज़रना पड़ा, इस वजह से मैंने ये फ़ैसला किया है कि मैं एक्टिव पॉलिटिक्स छोड़ रही हूँ। और ये भी मैं कहना चाहती हूँ कि आज से मैं पीटीआई या किसी भी सियासी जमात का हिस्सा नहीं होंगी।
मुझे बहुत अफसोस अपनी वालदा के लिए हुआ कि वो हमेशा आगे थी पीटीआई का दिफा करने के लिए, इमरान खान साहब का साथ देने के लिए, चाहे मेरा उनके साथ इस बात पर इख्तिलाफ था। लेकिन इमरान खान साहब ने कोई 5-6 दिन बाद जाकर कोई बयान दिया जहां उनका नाम लिया और कहा कि जो उनके साथ हो रहा है वो गलत हो रहा है। लेकिन इमरान खान साहब को भी सिर्फ अपनी पड़ी हुई है, अपनी बीवी की पड़ी हुई है, लेकिन और किसी की नहीं पड़ी हुई। और इस हद तक कि जो पीटीआई के वकला हैं वो उन लोगों को लीगल सपोर्ट नहीं दे रहे जो हजारों की तादाद में उनका कारकुन गिरफ्तार हुआ है, जो कारकुन गायब किया गया है, तो उन्हें क्यों पीटीआई अबैंडन कर रही है? उनकी क्या गलती है?
And Pakistan government is looking for a top Pakistani fashion designer, accusing her of being the mastermind of the attack on the Flagstaff house of the Corps Commander of Lahore, Lieutenant General Salman Fayaz Khan, who since has been removed as the Corps Commander of Lahore. There's been a massive nationwide manhunt launched to arrest top fashion designer Khadija Shah, the woman that you see on your television screen being accused of being the mastermind of the attack on the Corps Commander's house. The Pakistan Army insists that there is evidence, at least that's what the information that's coming out. They claim there is evidence that this lady you see on your television screen, Khadija Shah, is the mastermind of the attack on Jinnah House, the Lahore Corps Commander's residence, on the 9th of May. Khadija Shah, incidentally, is a staunch supporter of Imran Khan. She is the daughter of former Pakistan Finance Minister Salman Shah. He was an advisor to General Pervez Musharraf when he had taken over power in Pakistan. She, incidentally, is also the granddaughter of a former chief of Pakistan Army, General Khwaja Asif Janjua. An audio clip of Khadija Shah is going viral where she's heard apologizing for even being a part of these protests. She says her family members are being harassed. She says she's a part of the Pakistan Army. Her grandfather was in the army, and that her husband has been arrested in front of her children late yesterday by Pakistan ISI. We will continue to track developments on the story very closely, but that is all I have time for on the show this evening. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.
a bold experiment in women's empowerment. A self-help group led by the Panchayat head of Dawa village in Bihar's Bhojpur district has set up a plant to manufacture sanitary napkins. They are not only providing sanitary pads at a low cost to women in rural areas, but also creating employment opportunities for women.
ये जो योजना है ये हम लोगों ने बेसिकली उस वक्त शुरू किया जब कोरोना का दौर चल रहा था, तो ये चीज़ समझा गया कि बाहर जो हमारे यहाँ से महिलाएं जा रही हैं उन लोगों को यहाँ रोका जाए और कुछ ना कुछ एक सोर्स ऑफ अर्निंग बनाई जाए। और हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा औरतों को सैनिटरी जो शब्द है उससे परिचित करवाएं और मेंस्ट्रुएशन साइकिल में जो हम सैनिटरी का यूज़ करते हैं